Hello guys, welcome back to European Qualifiers Hub. So the World Cup 2026 qualifying main round is over. Actually not only in Europe, but in all confederations. And I will quickly explain in this video what to look out for tomorrow. I will explain the European playoffs as well as the international playoffs where teams from all of the other confederations will take part, and the last six spots for World Cup 2026 will be decided. So very quickly, here you see all of the groups, and the blue teams are the direct qualifiers, the yellow teams are in the playoffs. That's important because we will see those teams again very soon. You see that we have four teams in green. Those are also in the playoffs, but I highlighted them to show you that they qualified for the Nations League rankings. So interestingly, we have all four League D group winners taking those spots. We had all of League A qualified and two of League B qualified directly to qualify for the playoffs in Wales and the Czech Republic. And so the League D teams missed out. They could have, grabbed one if just, for example, Sweden or Northern Ireland or Romania, one of those three pretty much, would have done a little bit better in their group. And just a quick reminder that the group ranking doesn't matter in this at all because Sweden actually they finished fourth, but they still have a chance. Slovenia doesn't have a chance, and those are not in order. By the way, those are just in order of the pots. But I think it's interesting to see you have two pot one teams not grabbing direct qualifications in Italy and in Denmark, which is pretty interesting. And Kosovo actually the only pot four team to do anything well to advance in any way because you see the teams in green. Some of those have been pot two teams, but they didn't make it. And they were group winners in the Nations League, League C, so some have been saying that it makes sense to relegate on purpose to League C to then have an easier time to qualify for the World Cup, for the playoffs tournament, which might be true, but of course in the next edition of the Nations League you will then have to participate in League B, though it works different in Euro qualifications, but that is a different topic because next time the European qualifiers will want the amount of playoff spots will actually depend on how many host nations qualify. So because this time we had England, Scotland qualify directly, but of course more teams qualify. So it might be the case that we have 16 teams enter the playoffs. It might also only be 8. It really depends on the host nation's performance in the qualification process. So that aside, we have the teams, but I think it's better to put it this way because we see all the parts over on Wikipedia. And tomorrow the draw will be conducted at 13 o'clock. I think Greenwich time, I guess, but I don't know. You have the pods over here, you can see them, you can have a look at them, and it will work out pretty easily. You have no prohibited clashes because of Bosnia and Kosovo being in the same pod. So pod 3 is kind of a Balkan pod, of course Ireland's also there. Pod 4, all of the Nations League teams. This is done on world rankings. Pod 1 to 3 are done on world rankings, but Pod 4 is done solely on the Nations League ranking. So you will face, in theory, the strongest teams. You see Italy and Denmark, those two were the Pod 1 teams that didn't qualify. Turkey also showed pretty strong signs of being a contender. I think Ukraine is, of course, as seen by the performance, is the weakest team in this pod. And then Pod 2, you have regular nations that regularly qualify for Euro, that are often seen in World Cup playoffs, I guess. So the Pot 2 teams will play the Pot 3 teams in the first semi or in the second semi-final of each path, I guess. There are 4 paths, 4 nations of those will qualify, so they all work the same way. Every path works the same way. And you have the Pot 1 team, of course, hosting the Pot 4 team, but some of those Pot 4 teams, even though of course they didn't do that well in their respective groups, they might show, they might pose a challenge. And of course, the home advantage is very high, I guess, especially when you also are able to host the second final, or what I'm saying also, you're able to host the second final. It doesn't matter who is higher ranked in this, but the host of the final is drawn, so they will just draw one match, and then the winner of this match will host the semifinal. So you might be in pot one and you might play a pot three team in the final, but the pot three team might be the host, which in some of those cases is somewhat interesting. So you have teams like Sweden, and it's in March. It might be pretty cold in some of those cases, but you don't have Iceland or like Finland, where it's, or Faroe Islands, where it's really really cold. So that does it about the World Cup qualification coming from Europe. I know I haven't covered the international rounds mainly because it would be a bit too much. It's pretty hard to explain all of those qualification methods, but you see the teams right here. DR Congo had the hardest path, I think, maybe along with Bolivia, but they had to finish second in a very hard group. Then they had to be one of the best for second or runners up, and then they also had to beat Cameroon and Nigeria to get here, and they got here. Whereas other teams, of course, like Jamaica and Suriname. So just a quick explanation: every team gets one, every confederation gets one spot, and the sixth spot is given to the host nations confederation. So CONCACAF. In that case, Suriname, by the way, they only qualified because they scored more goals than Honduras. So it was a pretty close call. And then, yeah, I don't know how it will be allocated in 2020, 2030, because you have, in theory, three host confederations and actually more like two, like CAF and UEFA, because Congo won't be doing much. But that doesn't matter so much. So you have it's not here actually, but it doesn't matter all that much. You had the world rankings determine who is seeded in the final. Of course, a huge advantage. So hosting doesn't matter. All of those games will be played in Mexico. But you had Iraq, which is, I think, a huge advantage for them. I wouldn't put them as one of the two best nations. I would say DR Congo and Bolivia are clearly the favorites. But this is where it gets interesting with this. So this will be drawn at the same event. I even believe it's the same event as the European draw will be conducted. Those are completely separate from each other. So you have two qualifying from here, and the four European ones go through directly. There are no additional matches. But I think that's an interesting format because Iraq, they got here because of their world rankings. I think Bolivia is stronger, but they have a worse ranking because, of course, they lose more games because of their more difficult opposition in CONMEBOL in South America. Interestingly, Suriname is also in South America, but they play CONCACAF, but that doesn't matter. So how will it work? Well, you have, of course, those four teams that will have to play the semifinal. The interesting thing being that CONCACAF teams cannot play each other. So Bolivia, Jamaica, New Caledonia, and Suriname. I might have a better article actually here. Yeah, that's better. Um, you see those four are unseeded. But the point is that Jamaica and Suriname aren't able to be drawn in the same path because they don't want two CONCACAF teams playing each other. So one of those paths, I think Jamaica might be the tough one, but they're pretty equal. But one of those paths, I don't know why it's switched in this with DRC being in one, but that doesn't matter. One of those paths will get Bolivia and one CONCACAF team. The other one will get New Caledonia and one CONCACAF team. So the strongest team in the unseeded pot, maybe even the strongest or second strongest of all, I would say second strongest behind DRC. The second strongest goes in one path, and the weakest team, New Caledonia, gets in the other, who will probably lose, I think. I mean, New Zealand has been the underdog in those international playoffs always, but New Caledonia is they're far above below New Zealand, so I don't think they will have much of a chance. But of course, with Iraq, that's interesting because if DRC gets the DRC path, if they get Bolivia, the other path is open. And I say open for everyone, maybe even for New Caledonia. But for Iraq and for the CONCACAF team that gets there, it will be a very, very great opportunity to qualify for the World Cup. Meanwhile, if the DRC path gets New Caledonia, I think DRC is just pretty much not a shot of going through, but they're the heavy favorites. I mean, Jamaica might beat them, but if we have Bolivia and DRC in the same path, we will have a great, probably a very great final. Of course, an advantage to only have to play one match, maybe, but maybe it is also not. We'll have to see, but the last six teams will, yeah, fill up the World Cup field. They will complete it to 48 teams, and then next year we'll have the biggest World Cup of all time. And of course, I will be back if you want me to cover you 2028. I will be, I don't know how much I'll be covering, but I will upload one video for sure because the qualification process is nuts. Basically, if Ireland fails to qualify or Wales fails to qualify, they will just crush the hopes of 4 to 8 nations. Same goes for Scotland and England, but I think those have a highest chance. I don't know. So let me know if you want to see Euro 2028 content, and thank you for watching. And I will see you next time at European Qualifiers Hub.